This is not Daily Games. This is Anchored and Devoted. I'm messing with Jer already because I know we're ending and we're going to be starting another podcast, maybe shorter. We'll see. You didn't laugh like you expected or something. I didn't warn you. Anyway, this is Pastor
I
Joe.
didn't laugh just because laughing can mess up the sound. So I try to, unless it's a big thing, I try to keep it, in my eyes.
Gotcha. Okay, well, anyway, I'm Pastor Joseph. That's Pastor Jer, and this is Anchored and Devoted. Boom.
Hey-yo. Me say hello.
Hello to you. How are you doing?
Good, man. I'm good.
You got on green, and so do I. We're matching, but not. Mine is louder.
Well, you have a bigger personality than I do, my friend, and I love that about you.
Oh, it's a melon yellow, melon green. It's not a hunter green. Anyway, that's a distraction. What are we talking about today, or not?
We're talking about the making of a leader. How to make a leader.
Really?
In 3 easy steps.
What?
Mm-hmm.
About that? Did we read some fancy books about this or something? Is that what we're talking about this today?
No, that's not. I'll tell you why I'm thinking about it. Get ready for story time with Jer. So as our listeners may know, I have been and may, when this drops, still be in the process of changing careers, looking for a new position. And one of the things that I know I am called to and gifted in is leadership. However, as a part of my internal process of taking stock of myself, recognizing my strengths, my weaknesses, my giftings, it's been beneficial for me to look honestly at where in leadership I still have room to grow. Starting with the premise that each of us are called to be a leader in at least several ways that will likely be unique in the way that they're put together for our lives. But we're all called to be leaders in some respect, and none of us are the paragon of leadership.
Okay.
Even John Maxwell. Yeah, yes. He's not
the leader guru.
He hasn't achieved fourth degree black belt of leadership. He just hasn't. And hopefully, and I'm sure he does, have the humility and the perspective to say, no, there's still areas of my own leadership that I'm working on to improve. So for myself, I'm the second born of 8 kids. I'm the second born of 3, but we adopted 5 more. Long story, not necessary here. I have 6 siblings who are younger than me, 1 who's older than me. I was in the position of number 2, which meant generally I was not the person who was going to decide what we were doing. I was the person who's going to go along with whatever was decided we were going to do. And I'm okay with that. 90% of the time, whatever it was we decided we were doing, I was cool with. I enjoyed it. And maybe that taught me flexibility, which is a leadership quality that is desirable and necessary. It definitely taught me appreciation because I can look at something. Dave, you're a firstborn, so it might be different for you, but I can align to the good thing that you want to do without feeling like I'm losing because we're not doing the good thing I want to do in most cases. So I'm evaluating myself. I'm taking stock and I'm saying, what has shaped me into the person I am from a leadership perspective? How has the leadership that I have observed made me into the leader that I am today? How has it held me back from being a better leader? And what do I need to be aware of as I'm moving forward, both to focus on and to recognize I need to drop this. That's actually not a good leadership trait right there. That's holding me back. I need to intentionally put that down and let that be buried. And this morning, as my wife and I were going through our devotion time, the passage from Paul to Timothy saying, don't let anyone look down on your youth, but instead, in your conduct and behavior and speech, set an example for all. This is a leadership verse. This is a leadership verse that is freeing and empowering to tell Timothy. I told me, this is a conversation I had with my wife. You can replace the word youth there with practically any descriptive word, any word that I could use there to describe you. Don't let anyone look down on you for the color of your skin. Don't let anyone look down on you because of your economic background. Don't let anyone look down on you because of your disability. Don't let anyone look down on you because of how recently you came to Christ, how much money you have or don't have, what kind of car you drive, what kind of clothes you wear, what kind of music you listen to, where you grew up, what country you were born in, what country your parents were born in, but instead, in your action and conduct and words, set an example for all. And I realized you can't foist leadership onto someone. You can't force someone to take leadership and own it for themselves. All you can do is model it and then offer it to them, and then be there with them while they exercise their leadership, with a goal of helping them recognize their own potential weaknesses and make adaptive changes, corrective changes. So that's a long way of talking about where this came from for me. I'm looking at myself. I am a leader. I've been called to be a leader, and I need to grow in being a leader. And so the question is, how does leadership get formed? I'm going to keep on talking here only because I have more to say. So feel free to cut me off anytime you want.
You were going for it, so I was listening.
I'm looking at Joshua, right? Here's a cat who comes up. Moses is the leader extraordinaire in some respects. He's the handpicked guy. He's the boss. He's the grand poobah. He's the one that's got the authority. He's got the staff. He's got the miracles. He's got the expertise. He's got all the stuff.
I get to heaven. Hey, Moses, grand poobah.
I think he'd appreciate that. Probably more than like, hey, Mo. I don't know that he went by Mo.
Oh my goodness.
And then you have Joshua coming up, and Joshua comes up through the ranks, as it were. Who's someone trustworthy? Who's someone that we can give this responsibility to and expect that they're going to deliver in a reasonable way? They're going to come in on time, under budget, filling the scope. And Joshua was that guy, but he wasn't given the keys to the kingdom from the start. He was tested. He walked alongside and was brought into those conversations at a level that was appropriate, and then watched as Moses led and as Aaron led. And I'm sure part of the conversations that were going on was, hey, Moses, why did you do X, Y, or Z? Or why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? What was your thinking? And Moses turning to him and saying, hey, I want you to go take care of your own X, Y, and Z and come back and give me a report on how that goes. Deal with this issue. 40 years, Joshua was in a junior executive role.
Yes, 40 years.
That's a long time.
Well, that is definitely a long time. They lived a long time. But yes, that is a very long time. I do think it's different when you know your calling, like that this is something that you are called to. And that should change, hopefully, your perspective if you're in that junior role, because you know that God is going to work it out. What are you about to say?
Well, you have to know what you're called to. And there's two ways that we need to look at that. One is, I have been called to be a leader in this particular way, at this particular time, with this particular group of people. But the other way I understand God's calling is He has called me to live in word, conduct, and thought as a leader, regardless of whether or not I'm afforded the dignity, the respect, the position, the title. And I think paying attention to that second calling is what enables us to walk in the first and to recognize when it's actually, when the first time is actually here, and to be able to walk in it successfully. Because if we focus on, I'm the leader, therefore I'm going to lead, then at some point, the ends are going to start justifying the means, right? I've got this mandate. I need to get us out of Egypt, over this river, into that land over there. These are the problems. Here's how I'm going to attack it. We can, in the process of doing that, forget that we're still answering to someone else. And that someone else has not just given us a task to do, but has given us the roadmap that should guide our behaviors and our decisions. And a big part of that, as we continuously say here, is staying close to that manager, God, and saying, this is what I'm saying. Which way do you want me to go? I think a big part of forming leadership is learning the limits of my ability the limits of my knowledge and the limits of my control, so that I can walk in humility with the grandness of my mandate.
I will back the conversation up a little bit, because I do believe that, as you started off, leaders, we are all called to lead. And I think embracing that is difficult for the introvert. I do believe you can see this expectation for leadership in the early church, from how they loved and served one another. I do think leadership looks different based off of roles, uh, as well as skills, and then also maturity in Christ, as far as, your ability to rely on Him and engage and all that kind of stuff. There is an understanding that, when we look at Mary and Martha, typically leaders, or we like leaders that seem to be busy,
Mm-hmm.
even though the reality is we like them to be social toward us, or to feel known by them. We still like to know that they're looking out for our interests, whether you're a stockholder or an employee or sheep, and he's the shepherd. We want to know that, they're looking hopefully a little bit ahead of where we are, so that if a storm is coming, they can give us some kind of heads up and hopefully have some kind of thought toward how we should respond.
Yeah.
I do believe that there is space in church for leadership to be made a normal thing, or a normal part of the discipleship process. If you have an expectation that multiplication is done by the Spirit of God moving and softening the heart, and our job is to test and see what He is doing in the lives of others, and do that out and in relationship, by both recognizing those that are hurting in our communities, and those that have lost their voices, and being a God ambassador for them, just as Jesus was for us. It should mean that you end up in spaces where you are uncomfortable, and at times feeling alone, because you're starting something new or doing
Mm-hmm.
something different. The thing is, you have to be willing to communicate that idea, vision, dream to others, so that leading can take place.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe one of, and I kind of hit on this in the last episode, I'm not sure the order, but this perfectionistic model of, you have to be the happy, perfect family coming in on Sunday. And so, even though we were just fighting in the car or fighting at the house, does not allow for a communal response, or a communal understanding of life as God intended, where we can come to church and it be a hospital where we can recognize it's also a place of learning, just as it's a place of application. If I'm willing to be vulnerable with you, then, and you're willing to be vulnerable with me, and I know that we're seeking to help one another,
Mm-hmm.
we're creating a culture that allows for a healthier model for leaders, and not just one of what I've seen in typical church. Who wants to be a leader? And everyone raises their hand. And you're like, okay, why do you want to be a leader? Well, I'm already a leader in the workplace. Or I'm already a leader here and here. And you mentioned it's different, though, when we're talking about doing it out of our faith. And I think those ideas are brought into the church and often shortchange the fullness of what leadership looks like, in light of who Christ is,
Mm-hmm.
and how vulnerable He was, and how willing He was to sacrifice for us, and to be uncomfortable amongst His disciples,
Yeah.
to the point where He was in the garden praying and crying. That's special when you have those kind of moments. It doesn't feel like you're a distant leader, it definitely feels like I know you.
Yep.
And that's not what I would expect from a corporate CEO, because I mean, it's a corporation that is not a God-centered thing. I don't expect those things to come out. When it comes to a leader, whether they're in a secular place or not, if their faith is in Christ, I do expect them to live a distinct life that causes people, us to, it should cause us to pause. It should cause us to think through what is it that I really want to be known for. You mentioned this
Yeah.
before, when I step into the presence of God. Well, what is this well done for? And as a leader, if I haven't thought that through, then I really missed the mark. So yeah, there you go. That was my soapbox. You've had yours. I'll apologize to everyone already.
I started by saying I was a second born in my family, and that naturally led me to be a follower. And halfway through this episode, I was going to say that I agree with you. We are all called to be leaders. We are also all called to be followers. And I'll continue with that statement, but I realized there was something wrong with that statement. When we look at the distinction between Jesus and Paul in their discipleship models, Jesus said to his disciples, "Follow me." Paul said to his disciples, "Imitate me as I imitate Christ." I don't think that we are called to be followers. I think we are called to be leaders, and we are called to be teammates. I was going to say that the making of a leader happens by being a follower, but I want to amend that, because as I've been thinking, as we've been talking here, and I'm thinking through what it means to be a follower, there is a good kind of follower, and I'm going to keep that off the table because I don't think that's particularly helpful. There's the bad kind of follower, which I think is what we often would associate with following, and that is, name your cult. A follower is someone who I have control over so that they do things the way I tell them to do it. That never creates leaders, ever. Teamwork builds leaders. Moses coming alongside Aaron and then Joshua and saying, "Come with me. I've got work for you to do. I'm going to hand these things to you. Yeah, I'm in charge, but you're going to be my teammate." A team captain leading the team onto the field, leading them through plays, is not saying, "You guys have no voice here. Do exactly what I say." He says, "I'm going to call this, but I trust that you're able to execute this play and to make adjustments as necessary based on your understanding, skill, and the fact that we share this goal." And in the process of doing this, my goal is to be able to look at each of you and say, any one of you could step up here and take this role of leader amongst this team. Because what makes a good leader is being a good teammate. So if you want to become a good leader, and if you want to see good leaders made, build strong teams, be intentional. I am intentionable. Be intentional about joining and participating well in the teams that are around you. There's a lot of other qualities that go with it. We've talked about many of them: humility, curiosity, consistency, strength, grit, ability to listen, ability to persevere. All of these things go with it. Looking around corners, insight, being thoughtful, being patient. There's a plethora of things. But the way you build it is by giving the opportunity and the freedom for your teammate to make a different call in the moment than you would have, or than what you told him to do. Seeing how that goes, and then saying, "Okay, did that work out? Awesome. Help us understand what you were thinking and what you saw." Did it not turn out well? Okay, let's talk about where it failed. Let's talk about where it went wrong. What can we learn from it? Now let's go back out there and do it again. This applies in the church. This applies in the corporate world. This applies in families. This applies on sports teams. This applies, I think, universally. Leadership, teamwork, relationship are different barks on the same tree. And with that bad metaphor,
I think we'll crash land that plane.
drop it. Yep.
Yeah, we'll just we ran into boom.
Tail sticking out of a mountain somewhere.
We love you.
Thought I was going to get over it. Nope. Clipped it. There it is.
This is Anchored and Devoted. We love you. Be a good leader. Study what Christ did. Learn from your people God has placed you around. And do the work. Do the hard work. Again, Anchored and Devoted. That's Pastor Jer. I'm Pastor Dave. anchoredanddevoted@gmail.com. And please share. Please like. Have a blessed one. Bye-bye.
Bye.